Hello, hi there. I'm Lise Colucci, and I am one of the life coaches at queenbeing.com, where we help you to discover, understand, and overcome narcissistic abuse in toxic relationships. Hello, Karina. How are you today? Hello. Let's see. Today we're going to talk about triggers. Hi, James. Hola. We're going to talk about triggers and all kinds of stuff about triggers. Okay, so I guess we'll just get started. If you need help for narcissistic abuse, toxic relationships, and recovery from those things, head over to queenbeing.com, where we have tons of information about narcissistic abuse, about recovery, about your healing, all of that, about narcissism, all of it. Head over there. We also have information there about coaching, group coaching, and about peer support through our groups that we have hosted over on Facebook or over on Mighty Networks. So head over there, get information that you need. And also, I guess that's it. So we'll get started with the triggers. Let's see who's here. Say hello if you're here, and let's get and any questions that you have or anything you want to talk about with triggers, just start filling up the chat. Hi, Jack. You're driving. Oh, okay. You're going to listen and drive then. Okay. So if you all want to know your own power and overcome toxic abuse, hit the subscribe button, and let's get started and continue on this journey together towards your healing. Okay, let's go. Triggers. So everybody kind of knows what a trigger is, right? You have a reaction to something that isn't the actual abuse, and it makes you feel like you are either in the abuse again, or you are having reactions that were similar to the fight, flight, the panic, the anxiety. It creates behaviors in us that, that are related to anxiety. Obviously, that we want to run, we want to flee, we want to react, want to overreact, we want to hyper focus. All of that stuff. Super fight or flight. It's super triggering. It's triggering. It's like it's pushing the button on our trauma. And when you have PTSD, when you have had toxic abuse, when you've had, most people have triggers, okay, regardless of whether or not they have had abuse. When you've had it, the triggers are extreme, right? And they're kind of everywhere for a while. And you could be totally well on your way in your healing and think you're totally fine. And then you relive a certain situation, like say you switch jobs, or you start dating or something like that. And all of a sudden you are thrown into this triggered response, and you're reacting outside of your own will because you're reacting from the trigger. So let's keep, not that it matters, but love your channel and your honesty. Thank you. It does matter. You think I'm Canadian? Nope. I'm not Canadian. I am by heritage, but no, I'm American. Okay. What are we talking about? Triggers. Yes. So, how do you guys? We all matter. Yes, you matter too, and it does matter. It matters what you think. Okay. I was triggered today. I will tell you when I park. Okay. We'll wait. We're triggered often, right? And okay, so how do you react to a trigger? What happens? Usually people get really upset about the triggers, especially early on in recovery, or when they're still with a narcissist, or when they're like super close to the trauma, right? And they haven't done a whole lot of healing around it yet. It's because we have, it throws you right back into feeling like you need to run from the thing that's chasing you, right? It throws you into fight or flight. And that can be, it can make you feel like you're backsliding in your healing, right? It can make you feel like you're being pulled under, or you're never going to get better, and all of that. Like for instance, one example is you're out and you think you're okay, you're getting out again, you're doing some stuff, it's been a couple months or a month or whatever, and you see something that looks like your narcissist car. And you don't know if it is or isn't. It may very well be their car, but usually it's not. It's just a car that's the same color and happens to look like theirs, or it's the same model and make, and it triggers you into a response that's beyond what seems. It's okay. I mean, normal thing you might think, oh, I might get a little rush from it, like, oh, is that them? And then once you realize it's them, you calm down. But even when you realize it's not them, you're still triggered and you still have this whole response thing. Because what happens is your body is pumped full of adrenaline. Your emotions are, everything's lit up and your emotions are, and my phone is dinging. What? Okay, we'll just ignore those. Those are the bells of realization. The idea of bell. Okay. All right. Okay. Oh my gosh, someone's texting me like crazy. I don't know how to make the dinging stop, but we'll just deal with it. I got triggered by intrusive people that all have ill intentions. Hard to explain. So when we're triggered, if we're in a situation, one way to cope. So say you are in that situation where you see something that reminds you of the narcissist. You're not actually exposed to them. There's no actual threat. And you can't make it stop. You can't calm down. You can't just let it go, right? Because you're triggered. I just forgot I was live for a second. I'm thinking I'm talking to a group. Okay. You got to realize what's happening. Your adrenaline's pumping. So what do? When you're full of adrenaline? Move. Get out, take a walk. Get out of your car, take a walk if you're driving. Get out, do something to move your body. Get that adrenaline moving through you. Remind yourself that is not happening right now. That is my past. This is my moment. This is where I'm at. Okay. When we're super triggered, and we're newly out of a relationship, or we're so close to the trauma that it immediately throws us back there, or we've been out a long time and we have these huge triggers that are ruling our lives. We got to have coping skills, okay? Because it's not like it's just going to fade away. Sometimes it will, but usually with PTSD, it's sort of like that's part of the nature of PTSD, right? So some of the coping skills suggested and that can work are creating healthy coping skills so that you have a pattern of behavior you can go to rather than the pattern of behavior that's the path of least resistance, which is to go with the trigger. All right. It's calming, grounding, coming to the present moment, being in reality, things that distract you, counting objects, looking for 10 green things in a room, whatever it is, like finding a way to come, what's making all this noise? I'm like getting barraged with texts and I don't understand it because like nobody texts all day. Okay. All right. Anyway, coming back into the moment, talk to a friend, talk yourself down. I'm not, what did I write here? This is not the trauma. This is just a reminder of the trauma. I'm reacting to a reminder. It's a ghost. It's not real. Okay. It is a reminder of the trauma. It is not the trauma. All right. There's different kinds of triggers though. So what I'm talking about right now is the kind where it's totally random. It's just like you see an object that reminds you of the narcissist and you go into the fight flight mode and you're like reeling, right? So distraction is good in this case. It's not, you're not allowing yourself to feel something. You're not allowing yourself to go with the fight flight response because it's not necessary. You're teaching yourself to calm down in the face of the trigger and take a deep breath and realize that thing isn't happening. Now what? You're full of adrenaline. Go move. Do something to get that adrenaline moving through your body. It's not going to go away instantaneously. You have been pumped full of a chemical, which is adrenaline. And that adrenaline is there for a purpose to get you to run. And there's, you don't need to run. So move your body, do anything, do some squats, do a couple jumping jacks, anything. Just move your body a little bit and let the adrenaline kind of move through you. Take some breaths, use the adrenaline, go clean something, go organize something, whatever you need to do for a few minutes. It doesn't take long if you actually activate and do something with it. I have used this so many times and I've gotten a lot of stuff done that I wouldn't normally get done because it's like use the trigger, use the energy that you're given in that moment. Might as well, right? What are we talking about here? You guys are quiet today. Shh. Hello, Belle. How are you today? Triggering is the topic. Your phone is dinging. Just triggered me. Oh, I'm sorry. I know, right? Sounds and smells. Okay. The thing is, if they're going to surround us, we need to learn to cope, right? We can't hide our lives in a cave and make no sensory, have no sensory experiences and not live our life, right? We have to learn to cope with these triggers so that we can move through them and retrain our brains how to respond to them, right? Okay. And one thing is that's important is to realize that you're not doing this to yourself on purpose and it's not your fault. This is normal for people who have had trauma. And forgive yourself if you're having any judgment or self-criticism around the trigger. Because what will happen is you're just making it worse when you start judging yourself for it. I'm so stupid. I shouldn't react like this. It's been so long. I don't know what's the matter with me. Why am I reacting? But by doing that, you're feeding it. You're feeding the trigger and giving it way more power than it needs to have. It's sort of like getting a startle and then letting yourself calm down instead of getting a startle and then thinking that whatever startled you is all around you and it's coming after you. That's the difference where it's like, yeah, you're going to get the startle. You're going to have the trigger. And you got to learn to calm it down and realize that you're not in the abuse anymore. Now, if you still are in the abuse, of course, the trigger is valid. It's telling you to get out. The reason we have these triggers is because our nervous system has lit up and said, run. And when we don't run from toxic situations, right, we're teaching ourselves to stay put and feel we're not using the run. We know our gut is telling us, right? So it makes sense why afterward we still feel frozen because we're used to having to stay put in the face of trauma. But you don't have to anymore. You can move around. You can forget about it. You can distract yourself. You can, those are a few ideas. I find myself angry with my narcissist all the time now. When she's around, everything she says stirs my anger. Is that a trigger? You're still in it. No, that is justifiable anger. You're justifiably angry at someone in a situation that is unfixable because the person does not have empathy or accountability. Therefore, they're not doing their part in the relationship. It's justifiable anger, and you can use it to get out because that's where you can use to break the trauma bonds and get yourself away. A trigger would be you're out at the store and somebody says something that kind of reminds you of the way she talks, but they're totally innocently said it. And like maybe she uses a word and she says it funny, and that person says that word funny the same way, and you're instantly triggered and you're pissed off at that person. That's a trigger. Or you feel the impulse and you're not mad at the person, but you're now feeling all agitated and anxious because that reminded you of it. So that would be a trigger. Does that make sense? It's anything like echoing the trauma. Or somebody, who was it? Angela was saying that she got intrusive people that have ill intentions. So that would be more like a direct thing that's reminding her that abuse is happening. And she's being triggered because she doesn't have a response that she can get her safely out of there. But she's having to cope and deal with this situation. And so it's reminding her of a past situation of negativity that she's having to relive. So in a sense, that is a different kind where you're actually are reliving a trauma, but it's not the same trauma, right? And so now it's like, how do you cope in that situation? How do you maneuver through it? So that kind of trigger where, like, say you have a situation where you're around people that you have to be around for work or something, and they're being kind of awful. It's not necessarily toxic. Let's just say it like you kind of got to deal with it. But they're doing things that are triggering, maybe not listening to you. And they're triggering the way it felt when you were with a narcissist to not be listened to. So a healthy coping skill would be to learn communication ways of being heard, right? To learn ways to engage with the situation differently, to use a different strategy in that situation so that you're not repeating the same cycle over and over again. For instance, a friend who is gossipy always asked me the same questions about my life. I finally said, I can't talk about this. It's exactly what you do. You change the way you deal with the situation, and then the trigger changes, and you were shaking. You're shaking because it's adrenaline pumping through you. That's what triggers do. So then what? So then you ask yourself, what now what? It's okay to be shaking. That's natural and normal. We get afraid of our nervous systems is what I think happens. We get afraid of our nervous system reactions because we associate it with trauma. But in reality, your shaking was nothing more than releasing adrenaline and moving through the situation that you were placed in, and that you did something about it that was different is fantastic. You set a boundary. So as you set boundaries, our relationship to the triggers can change. Then she said, okay, fine, and stop talking to me. Well, you know what? Part of the process of healing from narcissistic abuse, we lose people. We lose the people that don't meet the standards of the life we want to live. It's sad and it's hard, but it's the way it is. Almost everyone loses a friend or two through this process, because what we see is how much we tolerate from people and how we don't need to live that way, and that it's not actually healthy for us to tolerate. We should tolerate it to a certain degree, but things that are going beyond our moral scope or things that are crossing our boundaries, we don't need to do that anymore. And as we do that, we tend to lose people now and then, and it's uncomfortable and it doesn't feel good and it's sad and there's loss and grief. However, you've just made room for people and things and your own experience of yourself in your life by doing that. Otherwise, it's filled with people like that, right? I like her, but she will tell my ex what I say. Well, yeah, it's sad. It's hard and it's sad when people can't be emotionally safe. It is, but it's also, we have to take a breath and do what's best for our lives, right? All right. My heart races and my mind when I get triggered. That is a good point. Okay. Deep breath brings me back to the present moment. Getting in the present moment is, I think, critical when you're triggered. That's what anything that brings you. I mean, like I said, the suggestions I had were pretty basic ones, and count, 10 objects that are round, find, 8 things that are green, whatever, or blue or whatever, pick something to come into the moment to bring you right to the space where you're at. Deep breaths, belly breathing, not deep, not shallow breaths, deep belly breathing, feeling your feet on the ground, noticing things around you, experiencing your senses. Oh my gosh, it's cold out. When you get triggered, you don't even feel anything. You just go kind of numb for a second. Come back into your body. Oh, I can feel that the season's changing, or wow, it's really still hot out here, or whatever. Notice the way the air feels on your skin. Notice that you have hands and feet, if you have them. Notice parts of yourself that have gone numb, because everything's rushing. All right. So bring it down and slow it down to cope, to calm it down and come back into the moment. And then the trigger goes from like huge to kind of medium and then down to small. And if you do it over time, it doesn't get as huge for some people. For some people, EMDR and other methods through a therapist can be useful, but we're talking about everyday triggers all the time. After narcissistic abuse, coping skills are what we need, right? What are we talking about? Bella says, and at the doctor's today, reading a wall poster about cortisol and weight gain. Yes, I was way too thin, but I barely eat now. Metabolism is messed up because of triggers, adrenaline, and cortisol. It's exactly, right? And so if we learn to calm them as they're happening, then we don't have the raise quite as high, hopefully, of the cortisol and the adrenaline. We move it through, right? Use what you need of the adrenaline and try and calm. It's hard. It is hard. And when you're talking about, you said, as the day passes, I've had a lovely day. The nerves due to come home. I notice my heart starts pounding, triggering, super triggering. That's not triggering necessarily. That's more anticipation. That's more when you're talking about the narcissist is about to arrive home. That's anticipatory anxiety. It's real. Okay. Triggering would be at 5 o'clock, I get anxious even though I haven't seen him for 5 weeks, or whatever time. So yeah, you're experiencing real time trauma when he walks through that door. That's a little bit different. And so let's talk about that. Preparing for a trigger. Let's include this in that, because I think some of the information will be useful. Preparing for a trigger. So say you, hi Daniel. Say you're having a situation where um, every time you shop somewhere at a specific store, you feel triggered, but that's like the only store you can go to because of the hours or whatever. So you have to use this store, and every time you use this store, you feel triggered. What can you do before you enter that store to calm yourself down, to make you realize that you're not entering a situation that's dangerous for you? It's talking yourself through it. It's staying present. It's setting time limits, having boundaries, right? So with him, I mean, what are you saying? I've had such an effect on the way I think. Oh, I'm happy if that is a good thing, right? The doctor mentioned we live our lives 48% aware of what we're doing. Ow, that's interesting. Okay, that's an interesting number. I wonder where they got that number, but I get what they're saying. Like we're just barely at the halfway point of being aware of ourselves and what we're doing because we're always in reaction to something. Oh my gosh. And we live our lives from the inside out. We experience things internally, and that's how we perceive everything that's happening. You could have two people standing side by side and have a situation happen in front of them, and the perceptions are so different because they're experiencing it through the lens they're seeing it through their triggers, through their biases, their personal biases, their social bias, through all these filters that we hardly ever get to the root of what we actually feel and think about something because we're always in reaction. So the point about a trigger is to get out of that reaction and ground yourself enough so that you can experience what's true in the moment versus the fear of what could be true in the moment. It's tricky. It's tricky. We got to play this. It's this balance of listening to what we feel, and because sometimes triggers are useful, they get us out of situations, right? If someone is super triggering to you, there could be a reason. That could be a red flag, or it could be a trigger. But how do you know until you calm down and say, "Okay, I hear you, trigger. Well, what's going on? I hear you, but I don't know what's actually happening yet." Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. We become hypersensitive and hyper focused on our own safety emotionally, right? So to prepare for his arrival, you know, an hour beforehand, the self care needs to bump up before you go into that place of business that triggers you every time you go in, but you have to go into whatever the situation is. Walk up to pay your, at the checkout stand, whatever it is that's triggering to you particularly. Everyone has something, right, where they have to do it, but it's super triggering and it's uncomfortable. They don't want to do the thing. Before you do it, ground yourself. Look around, find objects of certain colors to distract yourself, to bring yourself into the moment. It helps you engage with the surroundings is basically what I'm saying. Engage with your surroundings with your mind. Tell your emotions to just take a ride with us. We're going to go where we're going to go today, and you're going to sit there and feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. We're going to do it anyway. Tell yourself, have them take a back seat for a second. Tell yourself we're going to try and have a new experience here today. Things like that. When it's dealing with a narcissist in your situation, Belle, you can't really do that because he's going to do what he's going to do, right? And you've got to deal with it and cope. So for you, lots and lots and lots of self-care all day long in order to deal with it until you can get away from him. What is Jack saying? Name it, say it, I feel angry. You feel angry. What's going on? What am I missing here? You parked. Okay. Is anyone else hyper noticing a particular make and color of a vehicle? That's what we talked about at the beginning. Yes. I seem to be ultra aware of cream colored SUVs, and the parasite drove one. Anxiety trigger. Exactly. We were talking about that. So I still do it. I do it. I've turned corners to avoid a certain make and model. Shame to admit it, but really, turn corner because I don't want to deal with the face-to-face encounter, right? You don't want to deal with it. I know I could deal with it. It doesn't really matter. It's just in the moment, it feels super triggering, right? And so what I do is I tell myself it really doesn't matter anyway. It really doesn't matter anyway because I don't care. And You hyper focus on other things, right? And I have been known to get out of my car and take a walk around the block. I have been things like that too, because once the adrenaline's pumping, I don't want to be driving and then I get all agitated with driving, you know what I mean? And or get scared or whatever. So I've been known to do things to calm myself down, pull over, take a deep breath, realize that it doesn't really matter if you do see their car, so what? Okay, it does. Yes, it matters, but really in the scheme of things, they don't matter. Okay, and seeing them isn't re-engaging in the trauma. Now, if you're super newly out and you're trauma bonded, that's a different situation. But if it's been a while, it's sort of like you've never experienced this. How would you suggest dealing? I take a deep breath. I say a few swear words. That works. That works. How long has it been since you've been with the parasite, as you put it? Been away from, rather. That's what I said when I was feeling angry today. 2 women who got involved in my business because my stepdad told them some things about me to manipulate my choices to it. Okay. 111 days. I like that number. Congratulations. Okay. So yeah, still new enough to be super triggering because if you see them, it's like, there they are, right? But so right now, what's the worst case scenario if you did see them face to face? You would feel whatever you're going to feel, right? You'll walk away. You will not engage. You'll get to look right through them. You will get to ignore them completely and walk away. If you're driving and you saw their car, you could pretend they're not even there and not give them any supply. You could, when I look at like what the worst case scenario is, I make eye contact. Big deal for me. I just think, I put my I can see right through you face on and turn around and walk away. I don't need to engage, right? The fear is, well, what? Engage? We'll go back to them. That it'll trigger a Hoover, like does all of that. Yeah, it's real, but we can survive this. We survived them. We can survive seeing their car, right? We survived them. So it makes sense that you can totally survive seeing a cream-colored car. But the emotions don't listen to that logic, right? So I guess what I would suggest is really logically realizing that it isn't going to hurt you to see a cream-colored car. You're having a remembrance of something that did hurt you. And that's it. It isn't the moment that happened. It's later on, right? Can we legally volunteer my ex for a mission to Mars? And all the cars that they drove. I wish. That'd be a really full mission if we could send them all to Mars. So I don't know if that helps any, Daniel. I think what you're doing, breathing and saying a few swear words, is a good thing. Also tell yourself, I am not in the trauma. That is just a cream-colored car. Even if it's theirs, who cares? Adopt the attitude that they don't matter. They don't matter. They don't matter. You already have the attitude. You're calling them a parasite, right? Make it even less. They're not even that to you anymore. They can't even get to you and become parasitic toward you anymore because you won't give it to them. So they're nothing. They don't matter. Adopt that attitude when you're not in the trigger. When you see a cream-colored car, remind yourself it doesn't matter. It's just a cream-colored car. And say the swear words, take the deep breaths, take a walk. It's convincing yourself. I think what happens is we have a trigger, then we react to the trigger. God, I'm so triggered. And we freak out about the trigger that we're having, and then we escalate the trigger instead of calming down the trigger. So it's like diffusing it. Does that make sense? All right. Send them into hyperspace, like on asteroids. Okay. I told him not to tell people my business. It was really hard. I felt the anger. So I set the boundary, breathed, smiled, and changed the subject. Perfect. It worked because the anger left me straight away. Excellent. So by setting a boundary, Yes, dead parasite. Yes, it's the exoskeleton. That's what they are now. They are no longer the parasite. They're the exoskeleton. How's that? um, yeah, setting boundaries is excellent for triggers that are active like that, like Jack just said. Um, Setting boundaries in situations like what was it Angela that mentioned, where you have a situation and she set a boundary with her friend didn't like it and she didn't talk to her right now, but that's okay because now it's it diffuses and alters the abuse, the future abuse coming at you, right? Let's see. Yeah, it sounds like you did handle it perfectly, Jack. And so then when you have all this energy from the trigger, what do? Right? The only thing I can think of, honestly, is to move your body. And even if you can't move and you're at a desk, squeeze your hands, clench your fists, tighten your glutes, tighten your belly, and do it in a rhythm so that you have somewhere to put that energy in your muscles and let it out. Otherwise, you just sits in your stomach. It makes you sick, right? All right. How about triggers? Okay, let's talk about early on with triggers. Get rid of the memorabilia. Get rid of the photographs. Get rid of anything physically that reminds you of the narcissist, even if you like the thing. If you like the thing a whole lot, put it aside for a while, see how you feel later on about it, I guess. But for the most part, get rid of the gifts, get rid of the photographs, get rid of reminders, redecorate your rooms, clean up, whatever you need to do to make your space your own, to have them out of your personal area, because those kind of triggers are triggering you back to your abuser, right? And they are pulling you into your trauma bonds. So those kinds, get rid of it, donate it, sell it, get rid of it, right? Get rid of the stuff that reminds you of a person, items that have no meaning to you outside of the relation. If it was reminding you of, like, this yellow pen reminds me of him so much, I'm gonna get rid of this stupid pen. I don't need that reminder in my face. It may seem silly, but it isn't. You know, photographs in particular, if you cannot throw them away, if you can't delete them, put them in somewhere on your computer that you don't access. Put them in a place, lock them away. Don't access that. Don't look at it. Don't peek. Don't look at it. It's the same as the no contact thing and not looking at their profiles, all of it. Get rid of things that trigger you, especially when you're still trauma bonded. It's super important. What are we saying? Burn it all and change your world. That's right. Get rid of it. Yeah. Wrist rubber band helps if you ping it if they're on. Reminding yourself to calm down like that can help people with the wrist rubber bands, but I don't tend to, personally, that's not my thing, but if it works, then it works to calm down. I that just makes me have my wrist hurt and I'm panicking. Right? Okay. All right. All right. All right. All right. How about, okay. How about triggers if you're in a situation, you feel like you're healed, you feel like you've been on this healing path. Hello, Anna. You feel like you're on this healing. I almost read what she said instead of wanted to say. You feel like you've been on this healing journey for a while and you feel like you have a pretty good grip on what's going on and where you're going and all of that. And you are not feeling trauma bonded. You have triggers now and then, and like everybody does. Everybody's got them. It's okay to have them a little bit. You're feeling pretty good. Then all of a sudden you enter a new situation where, say, you start dating again. Okay, super triggering for some people, not for everyone, for some people. But let's talk about that kind of situation, because or something like you have to go to a family event. Maybe the narcissist family member isn't there, but the people who know that person are there. All right, or something like that, where you're entering into something real. Not going to talk about dealing with the narcissist, talking about dealing with new people that, or family members who are not narcissistic, but they know the narcissist. Okay. And so it's triggering, super triggering to be around the reminders and the people. New dating situations, super triggering, okay? Because you're around the same kind of situation and the same kind of emotions are evoked and the same kind of your pattern in relationship is brought forth again. And you've been not engaging in it. Hey, E-Rock, you've been not engaging in it and doing your life and you're doing great. Then you open that door again. Then what? Then what do you do? Right? You start spinning out of control. You start hyper focusing on what could happen in both of these situations. You would be hyper focusing on what could happen, what you know will happen based on history. You'll hyper focus on what the other person or people are going to do and say to you, what you think they're going to do or say to you. You hyper focus on, like if it's a new dating situation, you may hyper focus on every little move that other person makes because it means something based on your own trauma and triggers. It's the bias and the lens we're looking through that's creating a reality that isn't actually there. Even if it is actually there, it's not ours to control, right? If it is actually there and what you're seeing is like red flags in a narcissist, then you back away. And what you've learned is I can step into something, I can feel this connection and this desire for being around this person. I can see these toxic patterns and I can step away. That's a huge lesson. And people are afraid when they enter that. Like people newly dating will often say, oh my gosh, all that's out there are a bunch of narcissists. I'm a narcissist magnet. I don't know what's wrong with me. I keep attracting this to my life. And when you've had a situation where you may go out with someone a few times and you like them, but then you start seeing red flags and they're serious red flags and you step away and you say, no, I'm not doing that again. You actually learned a huge thing about your strength and power, that you no longer just do something because it's right there in front of you. Your self-worth is no longer beneath where it needs to be in order to feel like, in order to have a life that is healthy, right? You say no and you step back. So you learn a huge lesson, but what we obsess on often is the fact that we were triggered instead of seeing how strong and great we just handled the situation. Or maybe it's a new situation and two people are perfectly fine. There is no red flags. Everybody's as healthy as they can be, but you're triggered by every little thing they do because that's the kinds of things people do, right? Like maybe they don't respond fast enough, or maybe they text too much. A lot of women especially freak out when guys text too much. But frankly, a lot of people just do. This is how we communicate these days. And some people just text a lot. And instead of setting a boundary and saying, you know what, I like to text only 3 or 4 times a day. And can we stick to that? That makes me feel better. And seeing where the person, they freak out and they get triggered and they think red flag. So do you see what I'm saying? It's like, it's a really tricky place to work with your triggers. Setting boundaries is where, like Jack described, you gain your own personal control and power. It isn't from reacting to the triggers. If we're reacting to the triggers and freaking out all the time and totally hyper-focusing on how to control the situation, we're not actually responding to the trigger. We're reacting because of a trigger. If we have a trigger and we respond to it by setting a boundary and having open communication with another person, then we're actually doing something about it. Does that make sense? All right. What are we talking about? I saw a harmful person from my past in a public space and had a total anxiety attack. I froze on the spot and wasn't until my body moved for me and walked in the opposite direction. Isn't that the worst feeling? It's so awful. I'm sorry that happened. And so then what? What did you do, Anna? What did you do to calm down? Everybody in the world can I think, can relate to that. As a survivor, it's maybe more intense, right? It's okay, right? You did what you needed to do. Your body got you out of there. And you got out of the situation. Then what? How did you calm? Passive aggressive, yes, same here. I'm triggered when I'm in the space of toxic masculinity, or guys, that are angry and competitive, bravado, big time. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we remove ourselves from those situations. If we have to be around it, what? Internally gray rock it. It doesn't matter. You don't need to give it attention, right? Totally get that trigger. My triggers made sense, right? Old, slow ladies. I was terrorized by, yeah, seemingly the sweet, nice old lady. My mother was very painfully slow. That makes sense. So you see, your triggers make sense, but they're not, just because somebody else is slow doesn't mean they're toxic, right? Just because some other little sweet old lady is standing in front of you doesn't make her toxic. So it's being able to separate. I'm super triggered. That's not that person's fault. Does that make sense? That's not, has nothing to do with that person. I'm internally triggered, and getting away from our own emotional response by realizing you're not in the trauma anymore. You're no longer in the trauma. I'm safe and I'm free, and I can engage with this old sweet lady in a different way than I did with my toxic mother, who she reminds me of. We can't go through life avoiding all the triggers, right? There are some things that just don't even deal with it, but we can't avoid them all. So how do we deal with it? I kept walking for 15 minutes. Perfect. Breathed deeply and gave myself some script about a plan of action in case I bumped into her. And then I gray rocked. You very rocked her. You gray rocked her, and it worked really well. I was able to calm down. Gray rocked her. Yeah. Perfect. You see, that's what I talked about earlier. Keep moving, because the adrenaline is pumping. Once you go from freeze to flight, your adrenaline's like through the roof by then. You feel sick. You're almost dizzy from the amount of adrenaline that's pumping through you, right? You feel kind of woozy and dizzy, and your legs feel weak or whatever and shaky. That's all an adrenal response. And if you move, you start pumping the blood through you, and you start letting the adrenaline move through your body, and use it. That's what it's there for. It's there to make you run away from something toxic and painful or dangerous. The tigers, right? So yeah, and I love that you gave yourself a script. That's what I was saying. Have something set up for yourself. This is not the trauma. This is a reminder, and I'm okay. This is not the trauma. This is just a reminder, and I'm okay. And it talks me down. So a script that talks you down. I like how you did that whole thing. And then you created another script. And then you create an actual script of what you will do if the situation comes up again. And you realized all I have to do is gray rock. Like I was saying about the car, gray rock the car. Gray rock them if they look you in the eyes. Gray rock them. This is how we deal with toxic people, right? So you will do it, and you know how, and you will be good at it. And especially if you have it planned in your head, oh, if I do see their car and we do make eye contact, I'm going to look the other way, and I'm going to gray rock it. They don't matter. They are an exoskeleton of a parasite, right? They don't exist in my world anymore. Just like I would anyone looking at me from another car, I wouldn't sit and stare at them. I'd look away, ignore them, and turn the corner or drive away, So, and it's okay to do that too if they are like actually there. Just turn the corner, take a round block, go around the block, and it doesn't matter. Just get them out of your sight. Walk away. Move away from the toxic, right? You were mad at yourself. You know better. What were you fawning about? The other day, I overshared with my father, telling myself before I knew forgive yourself. When you catch yourself doing it, okay, so Iraq freedom. When you have a situation, this is my opinion anyway, when you have a situation where you are, you catch yourself in the middle of giving a narcissist or a toxic person more information than that you should be, or not gray rocking, or doing something that you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Later, when you catch yourself in the middle of it, or even after, especially when you catch it as you're doing it, but also after, if we hold on to being mad at ourselves, then we're in reaction to the thing we did instead of learning from the thing we did. Because the anger is just going to shame you, right? The anger isn't going to serve to help you never do it again. The anger is what you have learned how to treat yourself that isn't kind to yourself, right? So instead, if you say, "Ooh, that was a situation I could have gray rocked," okay, Where was the moment when I felt like I needed to overshare? Oh, it's when I all of a sudden I saw that look like they were going to give me attention. I want attention. So before that happens, I need to give myself attention, right? It's if you trace it back, you catch it instead of being mad at yourself. If you're mad at yourself, all you're doing is kind of solidifying the fact that what you did was wrong, therefore you're wrong, and on we go with the cycle. All right. So try and learn from it instead of being angry with it. Does that make sense? Angry with yourself as much as you can and forgive yourself. It happens. It happens. We all slip into it easily. It's difficult to not because we want human interaction. We're communicators, okay? You're catching it in the middle too, okay? And you stop doing it. Okay, then if you caught it in the middle and you think you stopped a little bit and said goodbye, then you did exactly what you needed to do for yourself. So let go of the anger so that you learn, right? You learn to catch it sooner and sooner and sooner. If we're angry, then we're just in reaction to our reaction. All right. He's very covert. Yep. Yeah, you see? And they give you a little crumb of attention, and it's the thread that pulls you in, and it's the cycle. And you fall into the cycle because it's a pattern. You can't change the pattern if you're just mad at yourself, right? You have to be clever and cunning to get out of that pattern. Thank you for the advice about giving too much info. It happens all the time to me. It helped remember, be kind to myself, catch it before if possible, and forgive yourself. Yes. Yeah. And if you catch it in the middle, just take a breath and change the subject. I mean, sometimes we catch it and we're like, oh my gosh, how do I get out of this? I just totally opened my mouth. And I said something, they're going to use this. We go, and then we can't stop talking about it because then they're like, what? But all you have to do is, use the distraction technique and just, oh, excuse me, I got something in my throat. What was I talking about? Oh my gosh, yesterday, did you? And just on to another topic, or what did you want for dinner or whatever you're doing. Just change the topic, but find a way to distract away from it. I'm practicing not say things. And when I do, I decide what needs a boundary and what I can gray rock. It's good. The time before that with my father, I caught it and I said, I don't want to gossip about my brother. One of the things he pulls out. And you can even minimize that and just catch it and let's say, gosh, I'm really tired today. I'm going to go sit down. Whatever. You don't have to even explain things to them eventually, right? Yes, distract and derail if needed. Absolutely. Derail the topic, change it to something else. Let them ramble on because then you can tune it out. Yep, yawn, gotta go. Yes, exactly. Exactly that kind of thing. All right. You ever notice how tired you are around them? Oh, so tired all the time. I'm hardly ever tired now. But I was so tired all the time. It was real. I'm tired. I don't think I can do that right now. It's actually real. Okay, you guys, I have to go in about a minute. So anything you want to talk about with triggers that I have not talked about? When you have the kind of trigger where you're in reaction, I didn't go too far into this. When you're in reaction to something new, that is a repeated, like if you're trying to make new friends, if you're dating, if you're trying to find a new job, if you're going to a family event, and nobody's toxic here. I'm not talking about re-entering into something with somebody toxic. So nobody's toxic, but the situation reminds you of toxicity and it's triggering you. What are some coping skills, you guys? What would you do? Have somebody to talk to. So when we're triggered by our emotions because we're afraid someone's going to hurt us is what's happening in these situations, right? We're afraid we're going to get hurt. And so we're listening to this emotional response that tells us something really big and bad is about to happen. Or else we try to manage it and control it. We don't want to live a life where we're managing and controlling everybody else. That's what we did. We weren't trying to control in a malignant way the narcissist, the relationship with the narcissist, but we were trying to manage down a situation for however long we were with them. We had to. So it's the only way to cope around a narcissist is to manage it down so that you're not abused perpetually, right? We don't have to do that with people who aren't toxic. We need to give people space to be who they are. We need the family to be space to be who they are, the new person we're seeing to be who they are. And in order to do that, what do? How do you reduce those kind of triggers? Those are tricky, aren't they? Um, does anyone else feel like we are in schooling for how to stay safe with narcissists? Lots of work. We're in schooling for how to stay safe around narcissists. We're in schooling for how to be an empath, for how to function as a sensitive person, for how to re-engage in life, for how to like function as healthy individuals, right? Yeah, it is. It is how to stay safe within ourselves. I like that. It is school for how to stay safe within yourself and how to have integrity and how to have. Um, so when we're in reaction to a trigger, are we operating from a place of integrity? Not really. We're operating from a place of reaction, right? We can't operate from a place of integrity without boundaries, without understanding, without stepping back and seeing the big picture. We're hyper focusing, we're diving in, we're getting this close. We're not stepping back and seeing the big picture. So you're at a family event, so there will be triggers. So prepare. Bring a friend. Have a text buddy handy that you can say, "Oh my gosh, I'm getting triggered," and they can tell you jokes. Find things that How do you self calm? How do you how do you how do you get out of your emotional space and into reality? Meditate, take a walk and let nature have it. Let nature take it because it will, right? It'll take a lot of the stress and anxiety. Look around you. Don't just stay focused on your own problems. Put focus on other people, put focus on other things. That helps you get out of your triggers. I'm not talking about if you're actually dealing with a toxic person. I'm talking about when you're making a mountain out of a molehill, so to speak, right? When you're making a situation into something it actually isn't because you're reacting to your triggers, as in new dating situations, new friends, family events. Yes, there could be things in there that are toxic, but how can you even see them if you're so close to your own reaction? You can't. All you're seeing is your reaction. You believe everything your emotions are telling you. So you got to get up into your logic and you got to look at the bigger picture. And yeah, does that make sense? When I'm operating in reaction to a trigger, I fully believe it. Yes, you fully believe it. I haven't utilized that space to breathe and distance and look at it in order to respond or not respond. Exactly. We all do it. Where somebody makes a face and we think they hate me because we're so used to that face meaning someone is going to be mean to you any second. It's safer to assume it's safer. It's not really, but it's safer in our fear, like to stay behind the fear we know than it is to enter into something unknown. But it really isn't. It's just patterning. It's patterning of behavior that we've learned. We're just in reaction. So we have to tell our emotions, okay, I hear you, but I'm going to try something different this time. I'm going to set a boundary with myself. And I'm not going to text them 15 times. I'm going to text them once. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to put my phone down. In fact, I have mandatory no phone hours in my life, right? No phone. And that's for that purpose, so that I'm not triggered by everything other people are, like my own reaction and then emotions to people, especially in the dating world. Nope, not going to be triggered by that. I'm going to put my phone down, and too bad. And taking breaks from the things that hyper focus you toward the thing you're. Does that make sense? I don't know how to word this. If you are, say you get triggered when someone doesn't text you right away, a friend, whatever, like it freaks you out because the narcissist used to do that all the time. And that was one of their manipulations. So say that's a thing. So put your phone away for a while. Get away from the thing that is causing the trigger for a little while. Force yourself, go do something else. Focus somewhere else. Okay. Get out of your emotions a little bit, because your emotions are lying to you. They're talking about something that isn't happening when you're triggered. They're talking about a past thing and acting as if it's in the moment. Unless, of course, it is actually happening. Totally different situation. I'm talking about actual triggers. So, yeah. I have set the best boundaries I can. I like sending my parents' calls straight to my voicemail. Yes. since I have to be in communication with them at this time. Perfect. That's right. And so in order to not have your voicemail now be a trigger, what? Choose the times that you're going to look at it. Maybe that's another boundary. I will look at 1 o'clock and I will look at 5 o'clock. And if, 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. And that's it. Because those are times when I have just eaten. And so I'm okay. I can deal with the 1 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I can do it like, before, after dinner. And I have enough time to process before bed, whatever they said. Yeah. Okay. And that's perfect. So you can refine your boundaries is what I'm talking about. Okay, you guys, I have to go. Who is here that I missed? Hi, Malta. Okay. All right. I hope that helped a little with triggers. It's kind of a all over the place topic, isn't it? They're everywhere. Triggers are everywhere. They are part of life. They happen. Okay. Don't be afraid of them. Life still happens also. When you're triggered, life's going on around you. We get frozen in time and thrown backwards when we're triggered. We get thrown into our past. Life is actually happening the other direction, and it's happening in this moment. So come back into the moment, try and find yourself, realize that you're triggered and that it's okay. And these are natural responses to feel anxious and all of that, and find ways to move it through you so that you can shorten the time that trigger affects you. That's the whole point. Because if you keep reacting to the fact that you're triggered, then your anxiety is like raising, right? They're everywhere, and it's not a thing to avoid. It's a thing to learn to cope with and move through, unless they're things you actually can control, like getting rid of the pictures and getting rid of the reminders and all of that stuff. So know what you can control, know what you can't control, know where your boundaries are. It's all boundaries, right? A lot of it. Okay, guys, gotta go. Hit the thumbs up if you like this. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. I will be back tomorrow. I don't know what we're talking about tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow. And yeah, be back tomorrow. I have some things to announce. I just don't have timing yet. So besides dance parties, I just don't have timing yet. So I'm not going to announce them yet. All right. If you would like text notification of my going live, text me at 33222. Put the word Lise Live, LISELIVE as one word, and hit send. And I will send you a text notification about 5 to 10 minutes prior to going live every time. I go live about 3 to 4 times a week. And that's it. We are going to do a dance party with some songs. But you guys, you're all over the world. So I'm trying to think of a time. How about sometime this weekend? Sometime this weekend, we should do that. If you want to do that, if you want to do it, tomorrow I'll think of a time. And I'll think of a way to get us connected. Like, you may have to email me for the Zoom link, and then I can just email you back the Zoom link. It'll be fun. It'll be silly. All right. Okay, you guys. That's it. All right. Take care. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. If you have a topic suggestion, or if something comes up and you have one, put it in the main section, the main comments, not in the chat, because I tend to miss them in there. Okay, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.